Welcome to a short bite of eCritical. This is part 2 for the neonatal layout. Today we're going to cover some of the essentials of the basic layout that you need to know about. Now, as you can see, as I discussed in the first part, I talked about the different neonatal, pediatric, and adult layouts. You can tell that you're in the neonatal layout because of the color scheme. If I change it, for example, to the pediatric layout by clicking on the button and then selecting Peds MD layout, you can see that this coloring changes from a nice, pleasant blue color to a harsh yellow color. If I change it to the adult layout, then I get the gray, depressing color of the adult layout. But we're going to jump back to the neonatal layout because that's much more pleasing on the eyes. Up at the top of the screen, you can see a little bit of useful information. I've already selected a patient, so we have some information. But remember, this is a training environment, so some of the data won't make a lot of sense. The bed location for the patient, as well as the patient's name, their age, which mine is a very well-developed neonate, evidently. And then the gestational age when that information has become available, as well as the dosing weight is all on the top line. At the very bottom, you'll see that there's the admission date, who the admitting physician is, or the attending physician, and the name of the current user, as well as the layout that's being viewed. The next line below this is are some of the drop-down menus. Now, I've already shown you the patient drop-down menu. There are two that are really of relevance to you. One is the patient list, which if you click brings up a list of all of the patients, as I've shown you previously. And the next one is the select department, which I've also shown you, just allows you to change the ICU that you want to access. There's also the ability to select the graphics patient list, but in reality, there's already a button specifically built for that allows you to access the graphical patient list, or GPL, more conveniently. There's a lot of other drop downs on the top here, and these are not relevant for the physicians, and so there's no information up here that you really need to worry about. The next line down is a series of buttons that provide you quick access to some of the operational functions that you may need to perform, such as entering in the admission documentation or the admission note, completing any procedure documentation, then any of the other additional physician notes that are part of the system, and then the ability to create a calculator, create graphs, and also fill in the death summary if the patient passes away. And then finally, as I've shown you, changing the layout is all available here. These last two buttons are kind of important. The refresh button allows you to reset all of the changes that you've made to the system. So if you've added a parameter or you've changed some graphs and you've made a bunch of changes to the system and you want to go back to its default mode, you click the refresh button and it'll set back everything to the way you used before. And then finally, the logout button is obviously very important. When you click logout, it will take you back to the login screen. Or if you close by clicking on the X up at the top here, it will also log you out of the system. The next set of buttons are actually tabs. These are the individual tabs we use to break up the patient chart, and you can think of this as it's an electronic chart. We break it up into individual organ systems that provide detailed information for specific systems of the patient. I'm not going to go through all of these different ones. Really, the best way for you to get familiar with all of the information available on all of these tabs is by getting into the system and starting to use it. Finally, the the next line down is all of the time elements moving forward and backward in time, and also changing the resolution of the columns. As you can see along here, these columns are broken up into 1 hour increments, and you can change that by simply clicking the clock button here and then selecting how fine-grained you want your information to be. So I've just changed it to every column is now 15 minutes, and you can see that, that you get a little bit more fine-grained detail. This is particularly useful when you're using the graph functions to see in to get the higher resolution detailed information that you might be looking for. I'm just going to show you how the refresh button works. I'm going to change it back to its default settings, and you can see we're back to the hour setting. Finally, within the time element, there's also the go to, which allows you to jump either to the admission time or the discharge time, which is important and relevant when you're trying to jump back to when something happened very early in the admission or near the end, such as when the patient died. Jumping back and forth to those elements saves you from doing a lot of clicking back and forth. The last part of this row, though, is the time moving the columns. There are 3 buttons on the left-hand side and 4 buttons on the right-hand side, and if you just tab over them, you'll see that they actually describe what they do. So if you press this button, it moves you back the column back one column. So we've gone from 5 to 4 to 3 o'clock in the morning. If you want to move an entire, in this case, 12-hour block, you just click that and it would move the entire page over to one full page. This functions similarly on the right-hand side. One click on the single arrow moves it forward 1 column. Click on the double arrow and it moves it forward a full page. The most important button, and the one I find most useful, is this button here on the far right-hand side. When you click on this, it'll take you to the current time. So if I'm in the process of figuring out what's going on with the patient or looking through and trying to get some details, often I'm going forward and backward in time a lot. This button will bring me right back to where we are in current time so that I can then see what we're up to at this point in time. So in the process of moving around, I'll often move over and just tap that button quick and bring myself back to the present. And for now, that's all there is to it. Moving around in the system is relatively straightforward. Each of these tabs and buttons should be intuitive, and you should feel free to explore the tabs to learn more about what information that they provide. Lastly, the time elements buttons on this row will help you move forward and backwards in time and forward and backwards using these columns, both by setting the resolution of each of the columns and also by moving forward and backwards using these buttons.